Welcome to the Harnessing Happiness podcast. Upbeat vibes generated and transferred to you. Now here's your host, Sarah J Naylor.
Hello and welcome to Harnessing Happiness with myself, Sarah J Naylor. Thank you so much for stopping by and taking time to listen to my podcast. So over to you, Clare. Please do introduce yourself to my fabulous listeners.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here with you today and your fabulous audience. So thanks for inviting me along. I just probably first of all have to acknowledge the connection we have about our spirit of happiness in our businesses. So I'm Happier Coach, my business is Happier, and you know, it's been really great to listen to some of your podcasts, connect with you, hear about what you've been doing, and obviously more recently we've connected on a book project, and my dad thinks I'm a fairy. So I'm the Happier Coach. I've got a master's in positive psychology and coaching psychology. I'm a qualified clinical hypnotherapist, and I'm continuing my training as a counsellor, because what I do is I work with clients all over the world, people who are looking to transform their lives from really a place of survival to thriving. And I find that when you're taking big steps to move forward and to transition in your life, quite often there's things that are holding you back. So they may come from a place of fear or overwhelm, or you've got that inner critic there and it can hold you back. So having the ability to look into what those things are through counselling techniques helps people to move forward. So I like to help energise them, bring that confidence all around the spirit of positive psychology and happiness, and to take them to a happier place.
I mean, I haven't got such far-reaching qualifications as yourself, but when I did my coaching qualification, which was a level 5, that incorporated NLP, and I've done so many other bits and bobs along the way, but positive psychology, I'm just all for. The way you perceive things and look at things and how you can change just by a small shift of perspective and focus can help you experience the world in a completely different way. As you're talking about sort of the counselling and the psychology in the different places, but if you actually look at that whole experience, and I love the power of the reframe as well, that, you know, you reframe that experience to one of learning. It could be a very negative experience, but actually I believe, and I don't know what your thoughts are as well, so I'd be interested to know your journey alone. I think, in fact, we should allude to how we've ended up connecting a little bit more, but it's that experience, the sort of the bumps in the road, crikey, that's quite an understatement for yourself, but those are what we learn from, and it's that positive reframe, that once you realise that these are learning opportunities and how much you grow from them, and the journey you go on as a result, and how you then kind of up level and experience the world in a different way. But yes, we've met through really My Dad Thinks I'm a Fairy book collaboration, haven't we?
Yeah, we did. It was a fabulous experience as well, and it's been a great opportunity to connect with so many people who have got such, you know, interesting stories. And I think what I really loved about the book and in connecting with everybody is everybody's honesty, their authenticity, and the fact that the book really shows how people have owned their vulnerability and stepped into that place of being courageous and doing something differently. It's really at the core of the message that I like to give out to people, and the reason for doing what I do is because I know how many people there are out there who are living in a day-to-day state of survival or just accepting their circumstances. And really I want to get the message out there that there's an opportunity for happiness, for harnessing that happiness.
Absolutely.
And, you know, really taking that to a place of thriving. You hear it a lot now, survival to thriving, and we hear that term used quite a bit, but I really do fundamentally believe in that, and that's something that obviously in my story and everything that I've been through, I've experienced and seen it. So interesting, going back to your conversation about positive psychology. So after going through a lot of therapy and such, I really wanted to understand the psychology behind it, of how doing therapy and counselling, and I embarked on doing a whole different things, anything that could improve my life. how that was happening and what changes it was making. I really wanted to understand that. So actually I enrolled back at university to do an undergraduate degree in psychology, you know, much to everybody's concern that I was expecting to relive my youth and hang around the student union bar, which was a completely different scenario when you've got 3 young children.
Exactly.
To the first time round I'd done it.
You had a thirst for knowledge, not a thirst for snake bite.
I don't know. I think pretty much I could have gone for both. Maybe more the G&T these days.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I'll go with you on that one. Nice Bombay Sapphire for me, thank you. Yeah. Cheers.
Yeah, and it was really so positive psychology. I wasn't so aware of it, but it was one of my options that I started taking. Was really intrigued with it. But we did the topic of post-traumatic growth. That is the principle that there's people actually, they don't just recover from traumatic experiences, but they go beyond that and they live a life of such greater meaning. And this really intrigued me because it was something that I had experienced myself, and it was like, I'm not alone on this. This is actually something that can happen for people. And how do we really understand that and harness that so that we can use that in everyday life? So a lot of the learnings that have been done from researching around trauma can actually help people without having the trauma as well. So people who do face depression, anxiety, they're not identifying that specific trigger point. There's lots that we can learn in that, and that's where I started to specialise, and then went on to do my master's specialising in positive psychology and doing some more research around post-traumatic growth and what the things are that are different between somebody who is able to connect with the ability to thrive and live their happiest life, as opposed to somebody who finds themselves in a place of holding on and simply surviving, so that we can make that change, because it's a change that everybody can make no matter their level of trauma or adversity that they have experienced.
I think there is a big caveat, is that people have to have that readiness for change, because it can't be fostered upon them. You can't force somebody to change who doesn't want to change. There's that thriving post-trauma, and that is something, you see, from a spiritual perspective, I'm putting it out there, and people might think I'm woo-woo, but I believe that we choose the lifetimes that we come into to have the experiences that we have, to learn, to move more towards sort of an enlightened way of being. So therefore, these experiences that we don't know that we've pre-requested, we then have, but it's and then the opportunity for us to actually learn from them. And when we learn from them, then we gain that wisdom, like as you've described. And I'm keen for you to sort of share your story as well, obviously, because it's a fascinating story that's led you to where you are now. So that's what I believe. And I also believe that, you know, we're very influenced, and I'm sure you'll corroborate with this, the first 7 years of our life. So there may be triggers that we haven't identified, because it's that first sort of 0 to 7 years is when we're sort of learning and absorbing and taking in information from other people before we can then start to make decisions for ourselves. But there can be stuff that we've taken on board and absorbed, but we may not know what that actual trigger actually is, but it's resonated. And until you sort of start to go back, or you might not ever really realise, like you said, what it is that it is, without real deep work, which might be sort of hypnotherapy based. It could be, I mean, I like EFT, and there's all sorts of different holistic therapies out there that can help you uncover. So not everyone will fit everybody, because thankfully we're all different, unique human beings, and we learn in different ways, of course, don't we, too? Yes, I mean, and you've inspired me, actually. I mean, I've often thought about doing a psychology degree myself, but it was quite interesting with all that I've learned. There were some parts of psychology that I wasn't sure that fitted with the coaching ethos. But it's interesting that you've done counselling, because counselling is very different to coaching as well. So I'm quite curious to know what your thoughts are around both modalities.
So actually my master's included coaching psychology. So it was an applied course. So we did look at all the psychology of coaching. Coaching really is an approach which is about facilitation of somebody's growth and moving forward. You provide an environment which allows people to grow and move forward, and we challenge them to go through that model and to get results and have those goals. What it doesn't do in its purest form is resolve the issues that we may be facing. So if you have issues around visibility in your business or taking action or taking the leap, there could be something that's holding you back that you don't fully understand. Now, coaching doesn't necessarily equip you with the skills to be able to go back and to uncover that. Counselling is about looking at those patterns, the schema, the pathways that are in your brain that make you behave and respond in specific ways. So by understanding a counselling approach, you can sensitively and safely take someone back to those experiences and reform them and change them, which is not what coaching is about. So by combining the two, it's kind of like making that, you know, where you start with saying in the phrase of 2 step forward, 1 step back. By having counselling skills there, it helps you manage that 1 step back so that you don't get stuck on your coaching journey.
It's interesting you describe it in such a way, because with the experiences that I've had with NLP, you can actually go in and work with the subconscious in a different way to reshape and re-experience that time that you've had that may be of a negative one and see it in a different light. I come back to the power of the reframe that I use and integrate when I'm coaching. When people are receptive and open to looking at things from a completely different perspective and understand that, you know, it could be this reason, and to sort of show appreciation and gratitude for those people that might have come into your life and not been great in your life. If I refer back to my previous relationship that was very challenging because he was a very sort of jealous guy and there was all sorts of stuff, I show gratitude for the time he was in my life, even though, you know, it's just because I learned so much as a result. I had to learn that I don't need challenging relationships, Claire. As well. I seem to have embraced far too many challenging relationships. I'm so delighted to say that I'm in a very healthy, happy relationship, which is rather marvellous. But it is looking at those patterns. And in the past, I've used EFT combined with some hypnotherapy that's cleared stuff, because I've just not known. You know, there's been stuff you've alluded to about standing up in your business. I remember before I actually set up my limited company, which was back in 2014, I was comparing myself to other people and didn't understand why I was doing it. And I went and had some EFT, and it says, oh, bingo, right, I'm setting up my business and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to make it VAT registered from day one. My thought processes didn't change, but there was something energetic that had been unblocked through the tapping.
It's about tapping into, and when you're conditioned to keep yourself safe and secure, what your mind does is it's not going to reveal that answer, because that is its secret source of keeping you safe. So it doesn't want to show that to you. By using tools like hypnotherapy, and I use EFT as well, using tools like that, it can dig deep in. I mean, another one I do, I have regular sound baths as well. I find that really helps me connect. You know, I went through I tried yoga and Reiki and NLP and EFT and hypnotherapy and RTT and anything I could get my hands on.
Love the fact you've tried all of these different things. So I think you've ticked off all the lists of the things that I've experienced as well.
I think there's different things that resonate with you as a person. It all has its value in its own way, and it's what you connect with and what you feel. And I think that's a really important thing, and something that I had probably shut down in myself with everything that I had experienced was actually connecting and trusting yourself and your instinct of what really works for you. So that's, you know, a really important side of things.
Absolutely. It's so powerful. Once you actually learn to trust yourself, your instinct, it saves so much time, Claire, because, you know, when you totally trust, I mean, I always trusted myself, but I was always wrong-footed by my ex-husband. He'd question me, so that would make me question. He's narcissistic. So it's just like, oh, maybe he's right. Maybe I'm wrong. You know, and it took me 6 years post divorce to literally get clear of that. We won't go into all of it now, but, you know, we're talking about all the things that you do, all the fantastic stuff that you do, but what took you to that point? And obviously, as I said, having read your story in My Dad Thinks I'm a Fairy, which is such a brilliant book of 10 separate chapters and powerful stories of people who've brought about change in their lives, and yours went, oh my God, oh my God, Claire. So just tell them a bit about you, please, and where you were at and what it uncovered, and so that they understand, you know, why you've gone on the journey that you have done, and, you know, obviously it gives you that qualification to help others in a similar situation.
Back in 2016, I guess this is the point at which it really started to change for me. So I was having a normal evening, so I thought we'd put the children to bed, and my husband said that he didn't feel very well, and within half an hour he'd had a heart attack and passed away.
Oh my gosh. How old was he, Claire? I meant to ask you.
He was 41, so he was a few weeks off of his 42nd birthday.
Oh my gosh. So completely out of the blue.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, his birthday, we actually had his funeral. So it was a circle of life kind of thing. I made the decision that, you know, it was a date when we could celebrate his life rather than be a day of sadness, really, because I've had 3 young children as well. They didn't understand that concept. They barely understood the concept of someone dying. So they had a big introduction to that and understanding all of that straight away. So obviously, you know, my whole world was blown apart and the world of my children. And it was a very dark place trying to come to terms with what had happened just in those every days of just breathing in and out, and at the same time trying to hold everything together and reassure the children that they were going to be okay and we were going to somehow do this. So we, you know, went through everything, you know, just to get stability there and the children going back to school and things like that. And
that's quite an amazing thing that you had to do, because you've got twins, haven't you? And
yeah, I've got an older one. So my eldest was 8 and the twins had not long turned 5. So they'd literally had their 5th birthday a couple of weeks beforehand. So a few weeks before, we'd only just returned from Disney World. So we'd been on a family holiday to Disney World, you know, had the time of our lives. We'd come back. The twins had just started school, so they'd gone into reception class. So life was kind of at a point where things were changing for us and becoming more settled. And I didn't have that huge nursery bill for the children.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And you'd got to a point where you were in a nice house as well, and you got your forever home and settled. You kind of settled down yourself, hadn't you? Because you sort of, prior to that, your home life as you were growing up was quite traumatic as well, wasn't it?
So I'd grown up in a household of domestic violence, and there had been a number of different tragedies in my life. I'd lost a friend to suicide. I'd had a miscarriage. We lost a very close friend in a car accident. There'd just been sort of several things that had really kind of knocked that journey, but had always held it together. But this time was different. This time, my belief in the universe had changed everything that I had held on to. I didn't know really where I was going. So I'd found myself that I'd got to the point the children had gone back to school. And it was the first time really that I realised how much I had to go through in order to find a new life and a new way of living. And one of the things was that I made a promise on the night he died that I would see our dreams for the children to still come true. So I had that, but I was also, you know, in a really dark place, and I knew it was going to be really tough going for quite a while. And the thought of going through all of that and all the work that I would have to do, I knew at that point that the theory of just surviving, of just playing a mediocre role in my own life wasn't enough. And I also felt very strongly that my husband no longer had the privilege of living. And if you have the privilege of living, you should do your damnedest to live the best life.
Do you know what, Claire? You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I remember it was a relationship I had post-divorce. Not that we were together at the time, but I subsequently found later that somebody I dated for about 10 months, he passed away from skin cancer. He'd been remarried, but I'm really good friends with his ex-PA. There's a lot more story to it than that, but every time I sort of have a moment of thinking, I always think, crikey, you know what? Alan's no longer here. I've got to make the most of my life, you know, and just wanted to echo that really, because it's quite a powerful mantra to, rather than sinking because of it, you live because of it.
Yeah, because there's an element of gratitude as well in there, that I am worthy and I have this opportunity and I don't want to waste it. And on the other side of it as well, I didn't want my husband's legacy to be one of sadness and misery and all of those things that are negative. My husband is well known, everybody, when they were talking at the funeral, were always talking about how he always had a smile on his face. He was an active member in the village, etc. And, he had this charm of this smile, and my boys have it as well, actually. They can get themselves out of anything
I love
with
it.
that deacon smile, as we call it. Yeah. So it was really important to make, that if I was going to do it, I was going to do it big style, and I was going to change what I wanted to give everything that we wanted for the children. So I needed help. I reached out. I was very lucky, actually, that I made contact with someone who was extremely experienced in the area of trauma and adversity, and helped me get through. But I also delved into anything that I could really do. So I did hypnotherapy, I did CBT, I did counselling, I did sound baths and yoga and all different things. Anything that was going to help me, because I needed to do the best I could for the children.
That's brilliant. I mean, and the fact that you recognise that, though, and you actively did that and experienced all those modalities, all those therapies, because, some things will resonate, some things won't. It depends on our sort of learning style, doesn't it? And what connects with us. Like you've just highlighted, I mean, I've done Reiki, I've done EFT, I've done hypnotherapy, I've done RTT, I've done, what else? I've done shamanic stuff, I've done journey work, I've done channeling, I've done NLP, I've done coaching. But it becomes part of you, doesn't it? And it becomes so integrated into who you are as a person. It becomes second nature. But then you've got that whole package to help and share. Because, I mean, you trained then into positive psychology, which sounds fabulous, that I'm a great advocate for.
So once I'd done a certain amount of recovery, and one of the interesting things I got to a place where I was now able to deal with life, and I wanted to start looking at my future and building it forward. But what I found was the mental health system only took you to a place of surviving. Once you were at survival point, there you kind of dropped off a cliff, and you'd have to start with someone new and start with someone different in order to how to build your life, which is why I've taken this combined approach with counselling and coaching. Because at a point where you've shown your biggest vulnerability, the last thing you want to do is to start that all again when you start putting a positive step forward. There was this space, but also I really wanted to understand more about what had happened to me, this transformation that I'd gone through, why it had happened, and to continue growing and experiencing and understanding where those beliefs had come from, how they were formed, and how I could best change them and support my children as well. Because obviously, having such a tragedy happen to them at such a young age, they continue to go through and experience different issues and challenges. So I went back to university. I signed up and did psychology undergraduate degree, and it was there that I was introduced to positive psychology and immediately connected with it. It really resonated with me, the concepts of well-being, living your best life, which is often misunderstood. It doesn't negate the acknowledgement of negative emotions or very valid emotions and have a need, but to take that kind of approach really resonated, and particularly around post-traumatic growth as well was a really big factor for me, something that I really aligned myself and understood that, and that is what opened my mind up, is my own experience of this taking you to a place of survival, and the fact that we can go so much further and everything you can learn from that. So I took my master's. I also at the same time took on learning hypnotherapy as a modality that I could help people facing anxiety and overwhelm. And I'm continuing on with my counselling training as well, so that I can help people no matter their starting point, even if they've just experienced a place of tragedy, but that we take that and support them to a place of real growth.
And that's it, isn't it? I mean, it's understanding, I mean, all the things that you talk about, it's having those different tools, those different modalities. It means that you can adjust, you can adapt to the different clients that you face, as you say, the different starting points, and just help them. And the power of coaching is never to be underestimated. Like you were just saying, you know, it kind of comes from a different standpoint, because it's very much positive, it's solution focused, it's not dwelling upon the issue that was and giving energy to that. It's looking at stuff. But if you've got people that need to get over something, to recognise those patterns, that's where your counselling comes in, that you can sort of look at that and address that before that person can then move forward. But looking at things from a positive standpoint, because there are so many different perspectives, aren't there, of looking at things. It's the one that you choose to view the world through. I've got a phrase that I hope you like, that I use quite a lot, which is life is an illusion of your own creation. So it's what you perceive, it's what you look at, because we all have experienced the world in different ways. We can both be in the same room doing the same thing that we're both doing at the same time right now, but we're in different rooms, but obviously doing the same thing. But we'll both experience it in different ways based on previous life experiences. And it's how you choose to view the world, because if you view it with one perspective, I mean, there can be so many different ways of looking at stuff, and the quick reframe and the power of that from positive psychology point of view is transformational. Just those small steps, but also understanding why you think the way you think because of the experiences that have gone before is very powerful as well, isn't it?
So that was something that I explored in my research piece for my dissertation. So I looked at, because obviously post-traumatic growth was something I was very interested in, but what I wanted to know is, why do some people get to a point where after experiencing tragedy they grow, and they grow to a position where they're truly thriving, into a position that they were better, more advanced than they were on a well-being scale prior to that tragedy, whilst others will suffer and feel stuck? And what is the difference there? And there's, in comparison to a lot of psychology, there's very little research in the area, although it is really growing. And something that fundamentally came to me through the research that I was doing, and I subsequently investigated, was about locus of control and how that's different. That's the concept that if you believe that you can't really influence the world and things that happen to you are kind of predestined, that you don't have an influence. If bad stuff is going to happen, it will come to you, as opposed to an alternative where you believe that you can make a difference, that you can take action and make changes. It doesn't mean that bad things won't happen, but it means that it's in your power to be able to deal with them. And it seemed fundamentally, and it was supported by the research that I did, that if you have a belief in yourself that you have the power to make a difference and to change something, then that instinctively makes you fight for that position. But if you don't have that underlying core belief that change can happen, that you can make a difference, then you succumb and become overwhelmed with negativity and result, and you're more of a victim in those situations.
It's the power of the mind, isn't it? It's the mindset. It's the whole adage of, you are what you think is so very, very true, because what you put out, we start to come back to the law of attraction. We're talking about the RAS, the reticulating. Oh gosh, now I'm going to have to try and remember what the RAS stands for, the reticular activating system. Which is in the amygdala at the back of the brain. It activates and recognises things. So if you're putting out positives, you'll recognise positives coming back. But if you're looking for problems, you'll find the problems. But actually, when you recognise that the bumps in the road are actually learning opportunities, and when you reframe it and experience it in a different way, then that takes that away. But underlying all of that, you've got to have that readiness for change to embrace that different way of thinking. I mean, I've worked with, clients that, put their perception, oh no, well, it's always going to be like that. Well, yes, you're absolutely right. It will always be like that for you, because that's the way you're thinking. But you change that way of thinking, you change that internal dialogue, because actually the brain's just a computer system, and we can change the program, because we aren't our behaviour. We aren't our thinking brain, because the irony of it is that we can observe our brain thinking. It's a tricky one to get your head around if you haven't ever really thought about it. We aren't our thoughts, we aren't our behaviour. We can change all of those things at any given time if we choose to do so, if we choose to do the inner work, if we choose to apply the learning from a point of consistency. And it takes time, doesn't it?
It does take time. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of energy, and sometimes we need more help in that as well. And that's where people need to get the right medical diagnosis for where they do need that additional kind of support. But the potential is there, the potential for you to change this. So our brains work on a system that has been taught a set of rules, and it's been taught those set of rules through our experiences and what we've been exposed to, and we come up with those set of rules. The only one that sets those rules for us is ourselves. We can take responsibility for changing those rules and changing what we believe and how we're going to act and respond to that. And an interesting one for me that was an example was I'd sat in a corporate job which I wasn't aligned to for many, many years. And it was always about the risk of leaving, what I would lose by leaving. After my husband had passed away, I sat there thinking about it, and something clicked and I changed. And what was the risk of me staying? How much was I losing by continuing to be small and not live how I want and challenge some of those expectations that were placed on myself? And you get to live a much happier life.
You do, absolutely. When you sort of really embrace the essence of yourself and you accept all aspects of you. And I have to say, I went on a learning journey post-divorce 17 years ago. And I say learning, do you know what was like a reawakening, Claire? It was like all sorts of stuff that was reading from sort of starting out. I read a book by Ileana Van Zandt, and I think it was, I can't remember, In the Meantime by Ileana Van Zandt, and The Secret, and then I sort of got into Paulo Coelho and all his philosophical books, and Deepak Chopra and The Powers of Synchronicity. I've read so many books I've read, but it's just like just all knits together the stuff that was already within me. And I say, I do believe that we choose the lifetime we have to have the experiences that we have to become more awakened and more enlightened. And in recognising that I had a second stab at life in this lifetime, post-divorce, I've sort of set out to sort of learn the stuff I need to learn to not repeat it next time round. So that's my part of my intention. It's like, right, now I'm going to go, let's crack on with that. And like you say, it's seeing the challenge. I mean, crikey, there was at one point a few years ago when my ex-partner that we split up, every time I put my head above the parapet, there was just like stuff being lobbed at me left, right and centre. Really, which you will have gone through, of course, naturally. I mean, your challenges have been far greater than I think than mine, but it's just everybody's challenges are individual to them. It could be something that might be really small, but appear really small to one other person, but it could be massive to somebody else because of how their life has been up until now. But it's about embracing it and doing things differently and facing it full on and going, right, I'm going to deal with this. Because if you don't deal with it, if you run away from it, it's going to catch up with you and it's going to come back as a lesson to learn again, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think, one of the really important things you said in there was about how you suddenly face up to these things. And it's only by being vulnerable and by speaking your truth that you suddenly realise there's a whole community out there who are feeling the same. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's why you in part do what you do and I'm doing what I do, is because we want people to know and understand that they're not alone, that there is something different out there and that we've all faced these types of feelings before.
As I said, we could talk for hours, but this will end up being a very, very long podcast. So thank you so much for being a fabulous guest and sharing your story. And I hope that it's given inspiration to all the listeners out there that whatever circumstances that you're in, you have it within the power within you to sort of overcome anything in your life if you choose to do so. Tell people how they can get in touch, Claire.
So if they want to connect with me on Instagram, I'm Happier Coach. So it's at Happier Coach, or it's happiercoach.com. So Happier is HAPPYA. Send me a DM, send me a message. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you all for listening. As always, if you've enjoyed this episode, please do rate and review. And if you're a new listener, please do subscribe or follow, whatever you do on your normal platform. And until next time, have a wonderful rest of the day, week, month, year, day, whatever it is, wherever you are right now. But please do keep tuning in, because there's a guest episode every Tuesday and a short happy clappy from me on a Friday. This has been me, Sarah J Naylor at Harnessing Happiness, signing out, and take care, lots of love. Goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Harnessing Happiness podcast with Sarah J Naylor. If you took value from the content, please follow the show on your podcast app. And to find out more about Sarah's ape mindset, visit sarahjnaylor.com.